Here today, and allow me to introduce our wonderful cast and creators. Steve Bloom, voice of Zeb. Tia Sircar, voice of Sabine. Dave Filoni, executive producer, supervising director. Freddie Prinze Jr., voice of Kanan. Taylor Gray, voice of Ezra and equipped with a lightsaber. And then Vanessa Marshall, voice of
direct
Hera.
them this way.
Dave will start it. Just to an idol.
I'm the only one.
Anything gets too wild.
We see
These are free.
That's right.
Forgot they don't see us.
No, Sarah wanted one.
I like the white one.
That's the silly.
An iPad.
Why, these colors were one of
Alright, we're ready for the first question? Who has the mic first?
Yes, for the cast, Freddie and the guys. When you guys decide to take on these roles, the fact that you're going to be part of this big universe that, of course, has a huge fan base, obviously, over the years. I mean, does it come with a lot of pressure? Did it feel intimidating a bit? And how do you guys approach it?
For me, yeah, I mean, there's pressure, right? Guys around my age, this is sort of in your DNA, you know. You said, may the force be with you quite often in your childhood. The scar on my chin is from playing Star Wars, you know what I mean? So I take it real seriously, man, and there's pressure. You're the appetizer for the next main course that's getting ready to happen, whether you want to be or not. So you want to make it special and you want people to remember it. But fortunately with Star Wars, they keep things in-house and they keep the family that did great things doing more great things. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off because I've already heard a lot of good feedback from people seeing it. But yeah, man, I get nerdy. You read some of those speeches and you're like, oh my God, I was 12 years old and dreaming about saying that. So yeah, there's pressure. But at a certain point you have to say, if it sucks, it sucks. I'm just going to go for it.
I'll say also, I don't know if I felt the same kind of pressure as Freddie did because I didn't grow up playing Jedi, but I also knew what I was getting into. I mean, in fact, I didn't even really know how. I mean, it's a big deal getting to join the Star Wars universe, and so for me it could have been really daunting, and initially it was a little intimidating. But I will say that the fans have been so. I mean, from the moment that even our names were released that we were going to be part of this show. Fans on Twitter and in real life and at events have been overwhelmingly supportive and just welcoming us into this family. And for me personally, it's been just it feels like being welcomed home. So I think it's been wonderful, and all that the daunting feeling has sort of dissipated. I mean, we do have to perform for this guy and live up to his expectations. But we're also in good hands, you know? He's not going to let anything substandard go out into the universe.
Terrible person. The Iron Fist like Vader.
He's done enough.
Yeah.
My first response was an 8-year-old squee. And then it went to the pressure because I'm playing a character who's a new species to the Star Wars universe. No pressure there. Yeah. Based on a Ralph McQuarrie design. So once that settled in, I think that was probably by the second or third episode that realization sort of settled in my brain, and that's when I started peeing my pants.
There's a delayed reaction.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So, this question's for Mr. Filoni. Were you a huge Star Wars fan when you were a kid?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I wouldn't know that there was such a thing as being a fan when I was a kid. I was just a kid and lucky enough to be born when Star Wars came out. So my brother and I, we were only 1 year apart, and we would ride in the back of my dad's car and imagine it's the Millennium Falcon and blast at other cars going by. That must have looked amazing. And, you know, it was like the first posters we ever had in our room. So we were just being kids and playing Star Wars. That's why I kind of find it strange. Some people ask me about Rebels and say, are you making this for kids? And my answer is absolutely. Like, who else do you think Star Wars was really for? That was its intention. It's just that now it's, you know, close to 40 years old. And I'm 40 years old, so it's like, I think the expectation is that it grows up a little bit here and there, but I think that Lucasfilm's been very good at making it a story that older people, older fans, and younger fans can both enjoy. So the best compliment I think I get now about any of the Star Wars things I've worked on is that it's something people watch with their whole family, which is, I know, what George always intended Star Wars to be.
Hello, over here. Thanks you guys for joining us today. My question is, how far in advance do you know about your storyline for the series?
Storyline or like scripts?
A little bit of both.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Everybody's like, what are we allowed to say?
I mean, we get our scripts very shortly before we actually get together in the studio and record an episode. Like the night before.
Yeah, the cool thing is they're so well written, it's very easy to read what's on the page. No, and I'm not just saying that, I really mean it. And our personalities are so close to the characters that we play. I mean, this really is his
What are you saying? What are you saying?
That you're awesome. That you're awesome. How cool is Zeb? I love Zeb. You're amazing.
Smells a little funny.
Yeah, I'm like sort of the mother of the group. I'm always feeding everyone and making sure everyone's happy. And so it's not much of a stretch, although of course Alyssa is quite far from Steve Blum.
Not really.
However,
Not really.
but the energy that he embodies, which is sort of a playfulness and a good heart at the core of his roughness, he is the merry one of the bunch. But anyway, we have our little family energy, and that lends itself to, it doesn't matter when we get the script. We just bring it to life so naturally and have so much fun. It's almost criminal. But we have a great time.
And we work on the story right up, obviously as much as we can to the last minute. Once we have a script, it's not like that's a final document to me. It's different than a lot of, I think, shows that way, especially in animation. When you're directing this stuff, the magic of Star Wars, really, I learned, is so much of it happens in editorial. So you're constantly moving things and changing things. You're thinking more in terms of a live action picture with footage as opposed to just shot-based. And so we'll rewrite dialogue often, and even scenes and situations in editorial, and I want to get them the most complete picture as possible. Sometimes I'll send a script into them with ideas that say, this is going to change, but this is a general idea of where this is going to go. But we work very quickly in television, so we try to push it as much as possible to make this as big a cinematic experience as you can possibly get. And I need every possible minute in the day to do that. But they're so great as the cast and very flexible. Plus, when we work in the booth, we work ensemble. And what that means is that they're doing the scenes. If they feel a line could be said differently, or if they see an opportunity, I always say to make me aware of it, and we have a discussion and say, okay, well, let's go that way, and that will affect things later. So it's a very creative, evolutionary experience and process making Star Wars. And you just have to be able to adapt to that. And luckily, from my cast to the crew, I've got people that can work that way.
Freddie, could you talk a little bit, you talk about playing with Star Wars and stuff. Can you talk about, do you remember the first time you saw the film? Mm-hmm. And secondly, can you just talk about the process of recording? Is that comfortable for you? Or do you feel like you've been kind of stripped away of some of your acting skills by having just do the voice work?
The first part first. I'm old enough to remember when cable was invented. And,
That's hilarious.
there was an actual cable and it went to a box with buttons. Pick the channel. And the first movie that I ever got to see was Star Wars. And at about 20 minutes in, the sound went out. And I couldn't hear like 10 minutes of the movie, and then it finally came back. And that was my first, it was with my cousin Chris, who was also the cousin that we bent the flagpole back and forth, and I got stabbed in the face. And we did everything Star Wars together. So that was, hopefully answers the first part. As far as recording, I learned fairly quickly, but it definitely was a challenge at first, because as an actor, on film, you can kind of use your eyes or your body language to show different things or to not show certain things. And in voice acting, and originally I felt handcuffed. and I didn't feel like I was good at it. And then I did this one video game called Mass Effect, where I just kind of said, you know, like I said earlier, you just got to say screw it. I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. And then I started being more comfortable in my own skin. And then when you see Steve just kind of go for it like you've never seen anyone before, you're just like, oh, well, if you can go that bananas, I can go a little bit. You know, and it makes it more comfortable. It was like, you know, not to compare you to Columbo, you're not that old. But when I worked with Peter Falk, it was a very similar situation. It was like acting school 101. He had a very different style than what my acting coaches had taught me, and it was just sort of a matter of taking a call from him at 2 in the morning, and he would demand that I buy him some True 100 cigarettes, and I'd go get him smokes at the Essex House and bring him to his room, and then he'd literally talk to me about acting and what was necessary to execute a good moment on film. And so I kind of, you know, I watch these guys, and they'll go, oh, we all learn from each other, but I learned a lot from watching these guys and seeing their techniques and what they do, and so I'm much more comfortable now than when we started.
This question is for each of the actors. I want to know, what is your favorite trait about each of your characters? And also for Freddie, who would win the battle of Kanan versus Buffy?
Can we go there first?
Well, you know, it's a tough question. It's a tough question. Buffy has probably more experience in battle than Kanan does in their careers, but she doesn't have the Force, so that's so. And I think Sarah, at the end of the day, would probably have to agree. I mean, we can fight and see. But I say probably Kanan. The Force sort of trumps all. Superman doesn't mess with Jedi.
No. You once said something that I really liked, if you don't mind me
You can
repeating.
say whatever you want.
He said, Buffy might be international, but Star Wars is intergalactic.
This is true.
Awesome.
Want to start down?
Oh, sure. Well, I play the voice of Hera Syndulla. She's the lead pilot, and I would say her courage. Her courage. Yeah.
Nice. Ezra, I like his self-confidence. I think it's a lot of fun.
He's a smart aleck. You know, as far as Kanan goes, his best qualities, he's hyper loyal, and he's kind of like, I look at him like that old dog that follows you home and appreciates that one thing you did, and so he's gonna stick with you forever. And if anybody else comes in, he'll probably bite you. Hera's his master. He's on a leash.
I play Sabine Wren. Gosh, I don't know if I have a good one word, but I think she's really savvy and smart in a way that I think I feel honored to get to play a female character, a young female character that is so whip smart and sort of she gets down to business, and I really like that about her. She's not she's not concerned about like the superficial. I really appreciate that.
She's Mando. She doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't mess around.
She's sassy.
Game over.
Logos.
She's sassy. She's the sassy one. Yeah, I see Zeb as kind of a work in progress. He's a he's a big dude. He's a warrior, but he's got a lot of growth potential. And I think that as the series goes along, we're going to see a lot of change in him, and I'm really looking forward to what that looks like, because that's kind of mirroring my life. So. You don't want to know.
I didn't mean to laugh that hard.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's true. I'm not ashamed.
For Freddie, I was going to ask you, and for anybody else who has young people in their life, how many cool points did you get for being part of this? And for Dave specifically, how much interaction have you had with George? Does he call you and what's going on, or what?
Turn my cell phone
I told you never to call me here.
How did you get this number?
But just are your kids aware of it? Because
Yeah, I tried to keep it secret from Charlotte because I wanted her to I don't want her to know how the magic trick is done because it doesn't seem quite as magic. but that got demolished because her friends at school found out. I'm like, your dad's a Jedi, oh my gosh. So she knows. So I'm excited to watch it with her, and a little bit of the magic's gone, but she, when she saw the Disney parade, and she saw Lord Vader, walking, which was weird for me, because he was such this frightening figure, and to see him hanging with Aladdin was a strange. But for her, it's nothing, and she was very taken aback. So he still had his presence, and you could still feel the alpha male was in the room. So even Aladdin was kind of like, so it still had its power. But yeah, I definitely gained some kid cool points. When I pick my daughter up from school, the boys are like, "You're a Jedi," and they think they know something that is a secret that I don't. Boys are dumb.
My kids are in their 20s, and I gained a lot of cred by doing this. It's cool. No, they're pretty excited.
For me with George hasn't been involved in Rebels at all. He'd never seen any of it, which is very different for me. Having worked on Clone Wars and worked with him all the time. You'd be hard pressed, I think, to find somebody that has more respect for George, the way he treated us, the way he instructed us. I mean, he's a fantastic teacher, which is probably the greatest gift I've ever been given in my creative career. But all the while, he told me that, he'd go, what I'm doing is one day I'll be gone, I'm going to retire, and but people here that know how to do this. And I'm like, because you're going to retire. Because if you know George's work ethic, it's unparalleled, On days that we would have reviews, it was really hard to beat him to work. I would try, but he gets up early. I mean, you're just like, why do you do this? But the answer is because he loves it, So he gave up something that he loved dearly in Star Wars, no doubt, but he gained something he loves even more dearly, which is the family he has and has always given a great amount of time to. So it's been great to see him, in that way. I have lunch with him from time to time, and we wouldn't really talk about Star Wars. And then he said one day, he's like, how's that new show going? And I said, oh yeah, it's going well. It's called Star Wars. And I love to mess with him. It's my favorite. And he said, well, I'd love to watch it if it's finished. So we actually did take it and showed it to him a couple weeks ago. And he really enjoyed it. And I would know the difference because I'm used to him giving me notes for 8 years. And he honestly liked it and talked to us, the lead creative, Simon Kinberg, myself, Kiri Hart and Carrie Beck about it. And you can see how engaged he was. And for all of us, I think, in the new Lucasfilm era, it was almost like our big final exam research paper, to show George something Star Wars and have him appreciate it. And I think it's great for our company going forward to know that we can create this stuff and continue it on in a vein that the creator of it appreciates and respects. Because that's the thing for me is that, any film, a reflection of the artist that makes it. And when you say you like Star Wars, you like that hand that paints that picture. And so when you subtract that, I think it's a good question to say, well, what happens now? I think the unique thing in Star Wars' situation is you have an entire generation of people that really love that story. And I know, you talk to J.J. Abrams about how much he loves Star Wars. Gareth Edwards is a huge Star Wars fan, I think we all together, we all want to do it right. Everybody at Lucasfilm does. Everyone at Disney respects that and wants to make it great, and so we continue that. And I think for me, it's just a great reflection of a man that I admired since I was a kid, and a kind of gift back to him in the end.
All right, hi, my question is for Dave. As far as that creative process that you're talking about, what kind of complications do you get during the creative process as far as, staying true to the Star Wars universe and not just appeasing people like George Lucas or J.J. Abrams, but the fans too as well? How do you overcome those complications?
Well, Wookiees are really hard to deal with. They get hair everywhere, and they're messy. They have outdoor habits, not indoor habits. Producing Star Wars is always a challenge because you're trying to figure out what can I do the audience hasn't seen yet, and how we don't want to follow things. We want to originate. I think part of it is you fight nostalgia for what people think Star Wars is. And having worked with George, I learned that Star Wars can be anything you want it to be, but you have to keep moving it forward. I talked to Dennis Muren, and when they made Empire Strikes Back, they certainly weren't thinking about A New Hope going, remember when we did this and that was great? They thought, let's put walkers in the snow. What's a walker? I don't know yet. Because think about that, they didn't know. You know, when they did Empire Strikes Back, they're like, we're going to do a really fast speeder bike chase through trees and dodging them. We've never done that before. How will we do that? I don't know. Let's figure it out. So, you know, if you're not doing things and challenging it, you know, with an animated series, you know, people think you can do anything, but you know, you have a budget and time and restrictions like anything. So you push yourself to say, you know, let's get these people, make them live on the ship, and let's do our own version of that chase, but do it on a freeway differently with cars coming. And you find ways to take what's old and kind of make it new again, or find avenues to go that's different. But it is a challenge now, because when the original movies came out, there was nothing like it, nothing even close. And I think kids today live in a world where there's so much media, there's so much attention, there's, you know, stories on their iPhones everywhere, that really what's fundamentally true before and now is you have to tell good stories, make characters people care about. Because everybody has big set pieces now, every summer, everybody has big spectacles. So the spectacle level is kind of leveled out in a certain way, but what is really hard to do is get people to care about it. You know, you see amazing things on screen, but that was neat, but I didn't really care. And so then there's no tension. So you establish tension by worrying about these people. And I think that we have created engaging characters. But it is the biggest thing I learned is, like, if there's something new and different and we come up with it in the writing room, and our first question is, man, how would we do that? That's probably something I want to do. You know, and even if it's something a little dangerous, think, oh, I don't know how the fans will react to that. You go, ooh, that's probably something we should do, because it's challenging, you know, and then you get better stories out of that, because you actually have to figure it out and be challenged. It's certainly not the quick and easy path, which is the dark side.
I just wanted to ask you guys, first off, who's your favorite Star Wars character? And is it easier joining a franchise, playing new characters versus taking on, you know, our old favorite characters?
I like Jabba the Hutt.
Why?
I also like Han Solo.
I love Chewie. I have a soft spot for Chewie. It's my very special first action figure that I got. And so his character is just adorable. As far as female icons go, I gotta go with Leia. Her moxie and class and brawn and nerf herder commentary. She really gives it and does so, and I think it's a really positive female role model. And Hera, similarly, although we don't know much about the Twi'lek race, we're discovering that more every day. But she also is a great female icon, so it kind of dovetails. But soft spot, Chewie, female icon, Leia. Thank you.
Love R2, hate Chopper.
Oh, dear.
Question. We didn't even finish this one yet. Tia, who's your favorite character ever?
Well, I also getting to play Sabine. I really appreciate so many things about Leia, like her strength and you know, ability to like kick butt, but also she's, you know, she does it with such grace and poise, and she's smart, and she doesn't take no crap from nobody, which I really like. So I kind of look to her as an inspiration for Sabine, and for myself also. But I really, really love Han Solo. He's hard not to love.
The correct answer is Boba Fett.
Sorry.
The correct answer is Boba Fett. He's the coolest.
Why did I say that?
He's the best.
I don't know that I have a favorite character. I mean, growing up, I was always obsessed with odd characters, so I love the AT-AT driver. Anybody that got hey, he piloted the Walker. I mean, he piloted the Walker. That's like that's a giant robot, like dinosaur thing. That was all. I drove my mother nuts looking for that action figure. You don't even know. And I found it.
Did they make one?
Yeah, of course they made
Did you
one.
get
They
the one
made.
that
I found it. It was at GC Murphy Mart. 82 probably, but so I like that character, and prequels, I love the character Plo Koon, who's one of the Jedi Council. As I love those guys that just sit there and seemingly do nothing. And but fans would wonder and imagine, like, fans knew every single name of every bounty hunter on the Star Destroyer in Empire, and yet they're never named in the movie. But they all knew that because we all played with the toys. So I was in a really unique position where I got to do Clone Wars, and suddenly I could make Plo Koon, who's a character I like that never did anything. I had him do all kinds of things. And in this show, I liked a toy I had as a kid called Imperial Transport. And I was always fascinated as a kid that was something that never appeared in the movie, but I had it as a toy. So when I got this show and it's in the right time period, I put that toy in the show because I just thought it was really cool. And it's really
jealous,
funny.
right?
I can do all those things. And, I met the guy from Hasbro that worked for Kenner in the 70s that designed that. And he was like blown away that we put it in the show because he still worked there today. And still works on the Star Wars brand. So Star Wars is a real legacy thing for people. It's very special. It's really like nothing else. And, when you're in a position to do these fun things, it's like I could take any story I played out with my figures as a kid now and literally put it into Star Wars, which is a power I wield with tremendous respect. It's really fun. I mean, these guys, right here, these troopers coming into being. I remember drawing that helmet in my sketchbook. Wow. And now here it walks in the room and tells you this press conference is over. It's really a unique thing.
Can you erase them too?
I can kill them off.
Just Bugs Bunny.
That's what I was saying, like erase them out.
That's you.
Is that it?
That's scary.
My question is for Dave and the whole cast. So we've kind of left off with the prequels, and we just got A New Dawn, and we've been kind of introduced to some really dark themes, especially where we left off with the Clone Wars. So, and from what we've seen so far, all of your characters have really dark backstories. So, what's it like kind of handling these darker themes that we've been given in basically what is being introduced as and marketed as a children's show? Is that kind of a hard balance to strike?
I don't think so. When I think of a fairy tale, if you look at any classic fairy tale, which has always been, for kids, whether it be Hansel or Gretel, I mean, there's some dark stuff going on. And if you talk I had a chance when he visited Lucasfilm to talk to Frank Oz for a bit, and he spoke about some of Jim Henson's ideas about telling stories for children. And, he felt that when children were scared, that it was essential. Part of the storytelling and development for them. One of my favorite animated films recently was Coraline, and I thought that it was pretty intense, but I noticed the kids in the theater were never really afraid because she wasn't afraid, really, and she overcame great things. Luke faced great obstacles. When Luke got his hand cut off, it blew my mind, but it gave me something to overcome, and it gave me kind of a confidence watching this character overcome it. So rather than shy away from things that I think might be perceived as scary or dark or intense, I think there's a tradition of storytelling that was always a way for kids to kind of learn about things that are bad or evil or immoral, and then see other characters overcome them, and then say, I can overcome these things too. I mean, that's kind of how I was raised, in a kind of opera-rich family, with a mother reading me Lord of the Rings, and I would sit there and you'd see Frodo do these great things, or Aragorn, and you say, well, why would I act any differently? I want to be like those characters. I want to be like Luke Skywalker. Han Solo changes his destiny and becomes something else, even in the trilogy, and when he learns to be more selfless. So I think that's a responsibility as a storyteller. You don't want to, scare kids. And definitely, I will admit, I think Clone Wars got a bit too dark, frankly, but we were headed towards a point where the heroes all lost, when even the Jedi were so flawed that their hubris overcame them, and it caused their own destruction. So we're dealing with the aftermath of that. But what you get in this time period is a period of hope that leads to the great new hope, which is Luke Skywalker. But I think it's a valid question to ask, so what was everybody else doing? And what about these kids that were born that could also use the Force? Were they just forgotten? And so we're telling the story of one of these kids who maybe, to everybody else in the galaxy, was just some ordinary kid. Or would have been left or lost, or just never found. But lucky for him, he found Kanan and this crew of people. And he learns how to be selfless. He learns how to be greater than himself. And I think that's what we're all trying to do, is people say, how can I be the best version of myself? So, I think it's a worthy story to tell. And thus, I watch the reactions of kids. They seem pretty excited by it, you know, especially when our heroes achieve something great through struggle. Yeah.
And kids are sharp, man. Like, just remember the movies that we saw when we were a kid. I mean, the Never-Ending Story wasn't feel good. I mean, if Atreyu doesn't lose Artax, you don't really care. You know what I mean? But the horse dies, so it hurts, and you have pain. You know, Wizard of Oz. I mean, the witch is legit. My daughter may be obsessed with her because she wants to be evil, but she's scary. You know what I mean? Oh, she's gonna be a heel for sure. She's a villain in the making. But kids are smart, and so I think the stakes need to be as real as they can be, or they smell out fluff, man. Kids know. They know if they're watching, you know, if it's the Smurfs or if Gargamel's going to get them or not. Like, they know. You know what I mean? Like, so it's got to be, it needs to feel real to an adult for it to feel real to a kid.
In the real world, we all have levels of dysfunction that we've grown up in, or we know somebody who's had severe levels of dysfunction. And I think it's great that it's addressed in this, in that way, and it really does give the opportunity for, like I was saying before, growth for my character in particular, and I think for everybody. We've all been wronged by the Empire, in one way or another, in real life and on the show, and it's always an opportunity to see that there is hope, and I think that's a great element of this show.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And